7:05, and per the regulations of open meeting law and the new provisions for the COVID-19 situation, we are meeting via Zoom. This is the MPIC Master Plan meeting for April 27th, and we are meeting by Zoom, and we have present, I'm just going to announce people here since we're not visible to most people. Francine Tishman, Christina Madsen, Jim Sini, Cindy Palmer, Margaret Lawson on phone, Chris Fowles, and Ken Comia, our PVPC consultant. So we have 7 of us present tonight. Brittany may join us a little bit later. So thanks everybody for joining in. I don't see offhand that we have any open public people, so I'm assuming that we don't have any public meeting comments. We will be trying to record this meeting on the computer here, and we'll see if that works, and that can be dumped over to Easthampton Media at some point here once we figure out how to do that, but they've told us we can do that. So
looks like it is recording.
Okay, good. I hit the button, so hopefully so. Good. So we just have basically two or three things to talk about. One is just to review the meeting minutes from last time, and then to work on the survey questions. And then just a reminder, because we are doing this via Zoom for anything that we do as an approval as a vote, we need to do a roll call vote. So as we approve minutes, just say your name first and aye or nay. So with that in mind, can we have some thoughts about the minutes from the last meeting? Those that were here, does anybody have any comments about the minutes that Cindy sent out from the last meeting where we first started discussing the survey a little bit more, and we went over the scope of work that Ken had provided us from the PVPC perspective?
No, I thought they were really comprehensive. Very good.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and that's Jim making the motion. Second.
Correct.
All right, and
I'll second it. Christina Madsen.
Christina second. Okay, and let's have a roll call vote. Approvals?
Fishman, aye.
Palmer, aye.
Palmer, aye. Go ahead. Christina?
Madsen, aye.
Okay, Fowles, aye.
Sini, aye.
Larson, abstain.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's call it that way as the minutes. Very good, thank you. Okay, so for the survey, we had the draft survey that I sent out to you that was the Word version. Finally, let me just see if I can call this up. I got one from Cindy that she had marked up, and I had started marking mine up. So I combined the two of those, but that may be a little bit of a nightmare. Jim, I don't know if you had any written comments you wanted to share, or you just want to kind of go through it orally as we go through.
Orally as we go through.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's fine. I got a few written things from Brittany as well. She sent me hers, and I've gone through, and she's actually, I think, in a similar mode as Cindy, tried to either condense or combine or cut out certain questions, feeling that it was maybe a bit lengthy. So let me see if I can pull up.
While she's pulling it up, one of my thoughts generally was that some of the questions I didn't think went along the lines of old master plan implementation. I think there was some data that we were considering that was in the collection status of the old master plan, but I honestly didn't know that updating it would completely inform the implementation process that we have before us. We're not writing a new master plan. So that's why I proposed deleting some sections.
Yeah.
Those are my general comments.
Okay. I don't think I can share 2 documents at a time. I have Brittany's here. I can try. I don't think I can. Nah, I don't think I can. So I've noted a couple of her questions, and I may scoot back and forth to those for a second. So why don't we kind of go down through these? I think, yeah, there is a question about how long this should be. The last time we talked about it, we thought that the survey was actually quite good, and we didn't really need to do that much with it. We decided to really use it as a base rather than reinvent the wheel. But this time around, as we think about things, keep in mind sort of the methods about how we might do this survey. Now with Ken here, we're going to be looking for your guidance as to how to do this as an online survey. But the reality is, I think we're probably thinking that we might have to do some sort of a mailing And, a lengthy survey in the mail is not always the thing that attracts a lot of people to actually complete it. And at the same time, we would have to be working out things like postage and return mail and all of that stuff. So just logistically, it might pose some other issues too. But let's kind of go through the questions first, and then we can see what we think about methods later on here. So everybody should be able to see the screen that can. Yes, hopefully so. If you can't, okay. So first question, just the colors are kind of here and there. I'll try to explain them. Don't get yourself confused. So I think Cindy added in just how many total years have you been a resident of Southampton? Do we really need NA?
No.
It's kind of a weird one, I think, don't you?
Yeah.
So I think that could probably just go away. I'm gonna just wipe it out. Oops. Okay, now I'm gonna change all that's gonna, no, I won't do that now because that's gonna mess up my question. Okay, it's gonna not let me do the numbers. Okay, I know that.
So I think that as in part of the introduction, it should, in order to respond to this, you need to be a resident of Southampton. You probably need to be over 18.
Right, yeah, that's a good point, yeah. So this is how many years you've been in town though, this question. So yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, in
Yeah.
order to even respond to this,
Yes,
I think we should set up that you should be a resident of Southampton
yes,
and over 18.
yeah,
But
okay.
that's just my
I'm
thought.
I'm gonna put in some funny color green, for example, right now, that the ones that I know that I can delete maybe a little bit later on.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we'll come down to the age in just a minute too, but that'll reinforce what you just said, I think, Margaret. Homeowner or renter, or a dependent. So there's a question about having, this done by the household versus done by everybody in the household. And I'd like to hear anybody's opinions about that.
Well, I would think that dependent is an important addition to this. I like that because I think that may reflect, the multi-generational composition of the household, and that also translates into different things that people want and need.
Okay,
If you have that age range.
okay,
I mean, if
We're
you,
also talking about the future too, so.
right.
yes,
Yeah, okay,
Okay, but logistically, how does that work? So
Yeah.
if, so I have a dependent at home and I receive this in the mail. So who's answering it? My dependent or me, or am I making a copy of it
yeah.
and then doing that?
Well,
So
that's
I think logistically, I'm concerned about that. And if we try to do the printed one and also say, or answer this online and do a MailChimp or something like that,
Yeah.
Maybe you could do more than one, but
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a household thing. So I'm not sure about that one.
Well, I actually think that there might be households where people would have different opinions. And therefore, I think that option should be available. Maybe it's, a married couple, but maybe it's not, and they live in the household and they both want to have an opportunity to render their opinion. In my household, believe it or not, I'm the one with the name on the what's the word I want to, it's my house, even though that's just the way we've set it up. So in fact, my husband would be the dependent, believe it or not, in this circumstance.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do think that dependent gives people a little more leeway in case there's more than one. That's
But
just
then
my general.
how do you each answer it? I guess that's my concern, is that
Well,
are we doing
one
this
of us would be
as a
the homeowner, one would be the dependent in this
But-
case.
Make a copy.
Yeah,
So I mean, you have to have the ability to make a copy then,
Yeah.
and so then not everyone would be able to
right.
respond it's not equitable
Right.
in that way, I guess.
No, and that's where I think we've got our challenges, to talk about, because I think, if we try to do what we originally thought would be just to do an online kind of survey, but recognizing that not everybody is connected, not everybody's going to go online and do this. So we would need to do some sort of mailing as well. And then, it would have to be in the directions of that mail out, especially, whether we're going to do per household. I mean, it would be wonderful to do this, per everybody of age in the household, but I don't see how we're going to do that. So that is the logistical issue that we're facing, and maybe we can. I think if we can get sort of the idea of the questions that we'd like to ask, but know that we've got a challenge with how we're going to actually administer the survey, and come back to those questions, because I think they're valid.
Okay.
I think we'd like to include dependent if we can, because I think, a 18 or 19-year-old kid, I think would probably have some thoughts too. So, I wouldn't want to exclude them if
Okay, great.
if we could reach them. So the question is how best to reach them.
Right.
And
So
how not to get duplicates from the same household. I mean, if the kiddo did it online and the parents, wanted to do it by mail, then, we'll never really know, I guess. But Ken, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Have you done these this way?
I've actually never seen dependent, so it's a interesting concept that you're bringing about. I think yes, you do want to ensure that whoever wants the opportunity to respond gets to.
Right.
I think it's a question about administering it.
Yep.
I do think that, outside of the survey, should there be another community engagement opportunity, obviously we want to be as, what's the word, creative with the ways we do the outreach, but at this point, it's probably not going to happen.
Well, I know that's the problem. We had our great brainstorming before the virus joined us, and we had all sorts of bright ideas about how we were going to do all sorts of things for outreach.
Right.
So we're kind of stuck against the wall here right now. But I think if we can just kind of see if we can go through the questions and agree which ones we really don't need because they're not relevant anymore, or it gets us, in a different direction, then let's come back, because logistics is going to be a tough one. I'm well aware. So, but let's see if we can make progress on the questions. But feel free, anybody, just to chime in. So, let's see, where are we? Homeowner, where I'm lost where I was. Okay. So are you a homeowner, dependent? Yeah, homeowner or renter or dependent. So the dependent. Okay.
Let's leave it for now. I think it's,
okay. And
yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Then where do you live? So an efficiency, 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom, 3 more bedrooms. And
can we change that to studio, which isn't what an efficiency is? Or that's kind of an old-fashioned term.
Okay, I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna make the changes now. I'll make myself a note. Okay. Well, maybe it will. Maybe it will. Let do that. Yeah.
Or you can do efficiency/studio. Then you cover it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
And the question, do you want people to indicate whether they live in a home or an apartment, or it doesn't matter? Because you have a home/apartment there.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yep.
Yeah, that could be a separate question rather than make that a dash rather than a, Okay. Good. So maybe this would be not the home, that would be home, apartment, then 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom over here.
Yeah. Can I ask what the size of the house has to do with anything?
Good question.
Does it matter? I think this is another one of those questions. I'm not sure. What would we do with the data? I guess the question would go to Ken.
Well, I mean, maybe you'd want to identify, depending on who's answering those questions, whether or not they may be not sticking around in Southampton for a while. I mean, usually when you live in an apartment, it's contingent on your money flow, whether or not you can continue living there. I live in Easthampton. I live in an apartment, but I'm not going to live here forever. But I would think that, if I'm to fill out a survey, they would want to know, maybe there would be some data that you could capture based on the type of housing that a person lived in, with regards to some of the other answers within the survey.
Yeah, but does it matter? Does it matter how many bedrooms in the home?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, it may indicate the size of the household a little better than if you don't ask the question.
Right, but if we're taking a survey to get a future look, what does the present tell us? I don't see the value in number 3, frankly. And unless we're going to get real sophisticated, and we can pull the data and say, okay, of apartment owners, this is what they're looking for versus owners, this is what they're looking for. Because later down the road, it asks if, where you want to be in 5 years, kind of a question about housing.
Right.
And associating it to how they answer this may or may not be relevant.
Okay.
But that's
Okay,
some work. And I don't know if we have
Right.
that level of, that degree of sophistication in pulling the data. And if
Okay,
it
so
tells
if,
us anything, even if we do.
if you're doing some kind of crosstabs analysis where you're looking at how do people in an apartment respond to affordable housing, that kind of thing, I think that's kind of important. I would suggest that we have like housing situation. Do we have mobile homes here? I don't think we do. So
We
it's
don't, no.
our apartment. But then I would look at size of household as a separate question.
Yeah.
I think that, because I think it could be interesting. If obviously they're answering online, it's easier to do the crosstabs. But
Right. Okay, I just put this in italics because there's so many housing questions later on in the survey. It may be that we either want to move this further down, or it may be that this
Good idea.
is somehow captured. There's a fair amount of repetition later on in the survey here.
that's
So
true.
let's just leave this so we know we want to come back to it. So I'm just going to italicize it.
Before you move
Yeah.
away from it,
Sure.
another option, which I don't think existed when this first survey went, was there's also condos in our town now. Are they considered homes or apartments or efficiencies? What are they? I think a condo should be in there as an option if we're gonna
Actually, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So
Okay.
let me ask this question again,
As
though.
well as attached homes, attached
So-
or detached.
Yeah.
And I think that comes later on too. We'll see that question again though.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Keep in mind though. Yep. Go ahead, Jim.
But again, it's not relevant unless we know the degree of sophistication we can get out of pulling this data. I can't answer that question. I don't know if Ken can answer that question, but how cross tabulating that's a great observation. Can we do things like this? Is that just a matter of labor hours and volunteer effort, or is it a matter of how the data is collected and then stored in like an access database that's a relational database? What's the plan for pulling the data?
I know that I have access to Survey Gizmo, which is a service similar to SurveyMonkey. The data is presented in Excel, so you would be able to analyze certain data points or data sets, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think that you could probably do the data culling based on certain answers if there are multiple. If you wanted to figure out who answered that they lived in an apartment, and then see what their answers are, and then create some sort of narrative from that. That you would be able to glean from from the data set.
Okay, so that's relatively easy to do, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
I think it is worth knowing that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just keep that one in mind, and we'll run into more housings a little bit later on down here. So basically, gender. We added other in here.
I feel like that question is oddly worded to me.
Which one?
Number 4. I think there's other ways to answer that aren't so binary.
Okay.
Because I find other to be offensive. So
Okay.
that's just me.
What,
But I wonder if we just say gender, and then
Yes.
there's male, there's female, there's trans, there's
Yes.
Let
gender
them
neutral.
fill it in. That's a great idea.
Yeah. I like that.
Something. I mean, filling in is difficult in terms of data collection.
Yeah.
But I would prefer that be reworded so it's not so binary.
Well, would you suggest what? Male, female, trans, what?
No, just write gender and let people fill it in, right?
Right. It's a little more difficult collecting, but it can't be that much more difficult.
I mean, it's just harder, somebody, you've actually got to really count the data. You can't mechanize it, your answers. That's all.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can look at some other surveys and see
Okay.
how they answer that question that isn't so binary.
Just look it up.
That's true, Chris. It
Good.
does require a.
Yeah. We'll just make that one a funny color too, so I know I got to come back to that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I feel like I'm being difficult. Okay.
So
No,
just
just
to
I think it's a really
that's
good
good.
point.
No,
We're glad you're here. Thank you,
Yeah.
Margaret.
yeah, I think as Margaret was saying that I do agree that seeing surveys, they've evolved to include different ways to answer the question. The way that I've seen it are usually it's presented in like a radio button, which is like it does provide some example or does provide answers, and the one that best suits you, I guess, would be the one that you would
What best describes you? Is that
like female, male, transgender female, transgender male, gender variant, non-conforming, not listed, or prefer not to answer. I mean, those are options that were provided on this specific survey.
I think that covers quite a bit. It includes not listed. It gives someone an option to not want to be categorized as we determine.
Right, as
Right.
Jim said, I mean,
Those are
you
some
can
more
write
options
not
than
listed
binary.
and then input the thing that you want to put in there.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I think that sounds good. I'm just going to put a C, Ken, and rather than spending time typing that in right now.
Okay,
Thanks.
good.
All right. Age, and here we have under 19, so that would allow for somebody in the household. But back to Margaret's question, you were saying, sorry, did you start out by saying 18 originally, Margaret? I'm forgetting.
Well, I mean, I think that depends on if we are encouraging younger people to answer the question either by making copies or if multiple people of the same household can enter it online.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's, maybe my concern wasn't valid in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Maybe we can just, for now, not worry about the logistics and just, if we want the younger people, we should include that. And maybe instead of 18, some towns are considering a 16 age voting. Why not 16?
I would
Why
love
does that
that.
to be dependent on voting? It could be 16 or over.
Yep, that's true.
Could you, so how about a 16 to 19 then?
I think under 19 is good.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to have 12-year-olds answering this, I hope.
One would hope.
Well, if they do, all the more power to them.
Okay. And we put the 80 plus up here too. So we got those. All right.
Right.
Retired, yes or no? And again, as if people really think there are questions that don't need to be here, let us know as we go along. Do you work in town was a yes or no question. I wondered if this was useful to add in terms of how far is your one-way commute to work? Does that get us any information? Less than 10 miles, 10 to 20 miles, or more than 20 miles? Does that help us understand how much of a bedroom community we are?
I think so.
Does
I
it
do.
really
So
get us
too.
somewhere?
I know we're trying to make this smaller, but that
No,
is
I
a
know.
question.
Well, we'll cut out something, I'm sure.
I mean, that gives you some information about how dependent people might be on the condition of the roads.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Snow removal in the winter.
yeah.
Yep.
I think we could kind of make that all one question. It doesn't have to be a separate one. It can all be combined right there, I think.
Mhm.
And I don't know, what do you think about this next one? Do you earn money from working at home? Is that one that could be added in there too, rather than being a separate question somehow?
I think you can group that in with number 7
Yeah.
because like telecommuting and
Oh, there we go. How about, do you telecommute? Why not that? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Or telework. Telework.
To me,
telework.
there's still, I mean, we might trick the optics of the responder by combining these, but there's still separate questions. You still have to answer them. So it doesn't matter whether they say, 7, 8, 9, 10, or they say 7 and it's multiple part. It's still a heavy survey.
Yeah.
Right. And again, this isn't binary because, I could make money for working from home, but I could also have a job.
Right. But yeah, okay.
That's right.
But for people who don't telework, they actually run a business like a child daycare from their home. Where do they fit in here? How do they answer that?
Yeah. Actually, maybe the telework goes up into number 7.
Okay.
Maybe that's where
Yes. Okay.
it doesn't belong there. Maybe it goes up there. I'm going to cut it, move it, and see if I can not screw this up too badly. There we go. I'll just make another place here. This will all have to be tidied up anyway. I'm just putting it for, a reminder. I don't know what just happened there, but something. I don't know. Okay. So do you earn money from working at home? Just leave it yes or no like that? Is that fine enough? Does that get us somewhere, or is it, or do you have a home business? Is that what we want to know?
I mean, do you have a home-based business? To me, is clearer than earning money working from home.
Yeah, I thought the question was kind of funny wording myself.
Yeah, it is.
Right, because this question tells us how important fiber optic, for example, infrastructure is.
Mhm.
That's what we're looking for with this.
Maybe. Yeah, we can try that. Okay.
Because you could have a home-based business stuffing envelopes. You don't require
Right.
any technology at
Right.
all. But
Right.
Right.
Okay. So instead of are you earning money from working from home, this will be do you have a home-based business?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
All right. Good.
and again, this tells us what we're asking this question because
Because why?
If I look at what infrastructure needs there might be in town, like fiber optics, like you said, I think it's another way of just gathering information about how dependent people are on certain aspects of the services that the town might or might not provide.
right. But to take that further, this question really doesn't answer that, because if I'm at home stuffing envelopes, I don't need the internet. I don't. If I'm at home running a daycare center, I need a phone, maybe, but I don't necessarily need the internet. So it doesn't, in my mind, address that question.
Okay.
It's separate.
So is it like one of those where?
So if the question is about infrastructure, that should be in the question.
Yeah.
If there's no value to knowing how many people work at home, as far as the town is concerned, maybe it tells us these are people who are not commuting and don't need the roads, or I don't know.
But it also, I think, gives us a flavor of the character of the town. I don't know if that's true or not.
If you
It
go
may. I don't know if we're looking for that, though. That's
true.
Thinking of a survey that is starting to get very long.
Yeah.
Where do we want to cut our?
So can we italicize this or something as a maybe question, and then it can be revisited?
Sure.
Can you remember that the original master plan referenced the fact that we have many businesses in our town, probably home-based, that are non-compliant with our zoning laws?
Yeah.
There's people
There was
that,
that.
I think,
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
and so there are people that are, cutting hair or daycare or who knows, stuffing, consulting on internet issues or something, and they're not supposed to be if you think about the zoning. We're okay with it. We're not going to make an issue out of it, but that is part of what came out in the main master plan.
Yeah, I don't know the bylaws. I mean, if you work from home in a small business stuffing envelopes, do you need to be in a commercial zone? I'm thinking probably not. But if you open up a garage and do auto repair in your garage, that's different.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to have a license to run any business in the town, period.
Special permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, permit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see.
So is part of the question then, if you could work from home, what service or what amenities do you need or something like that? Is that what we're trying to say? I mean, to back into the question the other way, that we need better broadband, is that what we want to try and elicit out of this?
Right. Again, it's back to what are we looking for with this?
Yeah. So let's, as Margaret said, let's keep it italicized, and we know we won't get you know, we won't get this final this meeting for sure. So let's see if we can get through as many as we can. All right, number 10. Instead of "Are you disabled?" I'd prefer "Do you have a disability?"
I agree with
Yes.
that, but
Francine,
But-
you're the expert there.
yeah, I agree. I guess my question is what's
Again.
the point of
Oh,
that?
good. Yeah. So that
question.
was the other question, and that tied into 11 about having a special needs adult child. I don't know why it's necessarily adult child.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered that too.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
No, unless we're looking at, transportation needs,
Yeah.
and or something like that. But we should be specific in asking that question rather than,
And see some of those
Yes.
again. That
Yeah.
the way this is laid out, it's really grouped very strangely. You know, it's not grouped according to sort of category of how you want to ask all the questions that are kind of related to each other. You know, it's kind of scattered all over the place. So we may have to do some thinking there. But do you think in general the disability and the special needs child are valid questions to have with us? I think if we want
Only as it relates to transportation. That's the
right.
only
So the
reason I can
question
think of it.
is, then you
Yeah,
just
you
reword the question and say, something about van transportation.
yeah. You could ask, do you need accessible or anyone in your home need accessible transportation?
Yes,
That would be the question
okay.
right.
when we get to that section.
Because that could be for seniors, that could be for disabled,
Sure.
yeah, there's a number of reasons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So that may come in later on, and we can maybe tie it back in onto something later on here. Okay.
Before you go on though,
Yep.
is it some kind of transportation that you aren't already getting?
Oh, really?
You know what I'm saying? If you're able to be transported because you're part of, you have that covered under your contract with somebody, right? That you may not need transportation. You may have a disabled child that gets transported to some sheltered workshop or something.
But do we need to know that?
That's
I
why
don't
I'm
know.
thinking the question isn't, are you disabled or do you have an adult child with special needs? It's what do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really what, like Jim says, what are we looking for?
Yeah.
Or we needed something called a fire cell.
Okay.
So maybe where you have if related to transport access and just add to that if or other needs, and then we'll kind of know.
Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
But,
I'm gonna get rid of this one here. Okay. So and combine it with 11. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let's keep on.
fantastic news.
Do you attend or have children in? And this was public school, private school of choice, homeschooled or not applicable, and get extra numbers in here. My question was, do we care? Do we want to know how many kids are in each of those different categories? Yes or no? And if we do we want to list Norris, Hampshire Regional, Voc, Smith Voc, Westfield Voc, or just leave it in Southampton Public Schools?
This is a question to Margaret or to anybody that really knows what's going on in the school system.
Glad you're here, Margaret.
Isn't this already known? Aren't these numbers already known, Margaret?
Well, they are, and because this just captures a moment in time, I'm not sure if we should be asking how many.
Yeah.
If we're looking at it again as, okay, if people have students, I would say I would probably put Norris, and I would put the high school, and maybe Smith Voc, because that might depend on how people are answering questions.
Yeah.
That we might be able to discern something from that. I would also, after school of choice, I would just put out of district in parentheses, so just people understand what that means, school of choice.
Yes. And I would like to see charter schools added to that.
Yes. I mean, that is out of district, but that's okay.
But it's a category unto itself, yes.
So you might say public school of choice. Well, though charter schools are public too,
Mhm.
but it is, yeah.
Okay.
I
And
mean, that's still school of choice. So, yeah, I need to think about that one because charter schools are considered choice.
all right. And then so for public schools, we'd go ahead and put in Norris, the
I would.
how about
I would.
Westfield Voc as well? No, or not? Don't some
There's
kids?
not. I mean, there's like 3 people. I don't know that that's.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I guess we could, or we could just say vocational and leave
Or
it at
other.
or vocational.
knowing that so many of them are at
Right.
Smith. I would just probably say vocational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just Norris, HHRS, and vocational. Okay. And that would
Yep.
be right after or as a subset of Southampton Public Schools, or just not put public schools here? Take that in lieu of that?
In lieu of that, I think.
In lieu of. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll get rid of that guy. Okay. Okay, good. All right. Do you participate and vote at town meeting? Thought this was kind of interesting too. And I think, Cindy, you're the one that suggested a change of potential answer there.
Yep.
Usually, sometimes, rarely, never. If rarely or never, please explain.
Yep.
I met somebody, gosh, a couple months ago, and I think she's like 75 or something. And she had never been into town hall. She came in to present something to CPC. She's lived here all her life, and she's never been to town hall. I couldn't believe it.
Really?
Yes.
Well, the unfortunate thing is, I think the people that never
Yeah,
will possibly not be filling out the survey.
yeah, that's true. Could be.
Um,
But I think it's valid though. I think it's a good question. I mean, just in general, in terms of our frustration with, civic participation in general and getting people on committees or whatever else,
Yeah.
whether this is the right place for it, I'm not sure. But and it's really just, participate and vote at town meeting. It's not talking about other elections or any of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
what does anybody think about this?
Oh, I was going to ask if you wanted to add town elections to this question also. Not political, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. I mean, that just shows, again, a level of participation, that's all.
Yeah.
Well, given the last election, remember the lines? Holy cow. I don't think we get that many people at town meeting, but we certainly got a big turnout at town election.
Yeah.
So maybe you're right. Maybe that should be a separate question, Francine.
I think those are 2
So-
separate questions.
So I'll ask the question again. What is this telling us? Why do
Right.
we need to know this?
I'm with you, Jim, and I'm also looking at the number 15,
Yeah.
where we're asking about whether we want to change our form of government. What are we going to do with that information?
So, with regard to voting or something in general, and just the greater goals of this survey, I think if we have an opportunity to ask some people some questions that may inform the town in general that aren't necessarily related to the master plan, I'm not opposed to that, because I think it's important to know about town meetings. So is it, I don't have childcare, or maybe there are things that we can do that would inform us in general in order to increase engagement, voter engagement. Just a thought.
Yeah. And whether, again, these questions may be out of place, it might be a funny question to have kind of in the beginning of the survey. I don't know, but
Yeah.
so
I think Margaret's points are valid. I'm questioning, but
Yeah.
my only caveat to that is, again, we all can probably think of many questions beyond these 2 here or whatever, where it'd be interesting to know, but the survey is already very long.
Right.
So,
okay, I'm just going to italicize them and come back. I mean, part of it is like, if we've got a captive audience somehow with the survey, let's make the most of it.
yeah,
We won't have another chance, but again, we don't need to make it any longer than it already is too. So some things are going to have to give, and I guess that's
maybe the last question of the survey could be, was this survey too long?
yeah, right. Could be. See if they got through it. Number 15, I think that's a valid question. I think this was, certainly something that had been talked about before, about going to the town meeting representative point of government. I know Art Lawrence still tends to favor that, for one, but I don't see us switching anytime soon. I don't know if it's worth bothering to ask this question. Anybody thoughts about that?
I think that's a very confusing question. Voting precincts, blah, blah. Yeah.
Christina, any thoughts?
Haven't we voted on this before at town meeting?
I don't know.
Hasn't it been on the warrant in the past?
I don't know, actually. I'm not.
I don't know that.
So to me, this one is like 13 and 14. I think it's interesting. I don't know, for me, I didn't find it confusing, but I just don't know. You know, it tells us, to me, interesting information, but it's also not salient necessary to planning and going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Ken, could you see any redeemable sources here for this?
I think it may make it more difficult with the inclusion of this question for like the for having to address it at some point in the future, should, you know, it be that a majority of the people that are answering this survey say yes.
Yeah.
You know,
What you ask.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
And I think it seems as if there are the advocates that are out there for that. They're going to do it no matter what. You know, it is a political. I think it's a political question.
Okay.
So I mean, that's just my kind of 2 cents with regards to that.
Yep.
If that wasn't the previous survey, I mean, I
think
feel like the question's been asked.
Yeah.
And it may sound as if the town has taken some sort of stance on it
Yeah.
already.
Or we have some motivation to actually do this, whereas in reality
Right.
we don't. So, can I go
I
ahead?
think that's what I meant by confusing. The question
Yeah.
wasn't confusing, but it was more that, wait a minute, is this being talked about? You know,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's the kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Can I actually just take it out right now?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm okay with that.
Count it gone. Thank you.
Look at what we saved.
All right, one. All right. Now this one, 15, are you satisfied with the level of services provided by town? And these are the yes or no ones. And this is one where we talked about it. I'm going to skip right down to the purple here. This was what we talked about at our last meeting about, instead of yes or no, that we didn't think got us any relevant information.
Right. People
so
need to rank.
It's sort of like a so what kind of thing. In the purple is just some suggestions that I had. Now, I was scratching my head trying to think of services, so these are not by all means all conclusive. So on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best, how satisfied are you with the following services provided by town? If no opinion, mark NA. And then my question was, do we have to think about frequency or timeliness? So, you know, as we talk about snow plowing, street sweeping, I don't know, mowing town property, the DARE program, I didn't even know the expired medicine disposal program, you know, I don't know, ambulance service. I mean, if people haven't used the services, how do they answer, number one? And is this just observation of people in town?
Well, and also, Chris.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That's where I am.
I was thinking too, is the question how satisfied, or is it more of a question, do you think, you know, how do you think it's important, 1 to 5?
Okay.
So I may be totally dissatisfied with the snow plowing, but I think it's really important.
Okay, so maybe it's the wrong question, phraseology. Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Could be. Yep.
Maybe it's 2 questions, which makes it longer. You know, first, are you satisfied?
No.
And then second,
Can't do that.
you know, but I mean, they're 2 different questions. Satisfaction is not the same as what you think is important.
Yeah.
They're very different.
Yeah, it is. But again, as you look at, I mean, and please add some more to this, but the ones I listed is all I could brainstorm in my own head. I mean, tree trimming. I mean, people say, yeah, it's important, but satisfied, I don't know if people would have an opinion on that. Or, you know, the recycling over at the landfill. I mean, is that, you know, a question of, or maybe not that one. I was thinking of the disposal, sorry, the fees for the disposal of other items at the transfer station. Is that an issue of cost, or is it an issue of convenience? Or, you know, I was getting myself muddled in what I was thinking through here.
This could really expand rapidly.
Yeah, I know. So I was getting out of control. So help me, anybody.
Can I interject here? You know, the open space and recreation plan is already expired, and there is a process ongoing to renew it. And as part of that process, we already started it. There was a questionnaire that went out, and it was all related to open space and recreation. Like, do we have enough ball fields? Do we know enough about you know, traveling on town property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could go on and on and on with this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to say what I said at the beginning of the meeting. Why are we asking some of these questions if we're just trying to implement the master plan we already have? Yes, it's a good point to collect some of this. This is an opportunity, but we've all sort of agreed it's long. So I'm actually not in favor of asking these questions in this particular survey. Once we get our stuff going on this, we learn how to do SurveyMonkey or any of the others, there might be another survey in the future. I kind of think we're going way out on a limb on some of this.
Okay, anybody else?
I tend to agree. I find myself vacillating back and forth between, it'd be interesting to see this data. Even the previous question, which we removed, it'd be interesting to see how people answered now versus about how the town is organized politically versus 10 years ago, how they felt.
Right.
But it is too long. And I think Cindy's got a really good point. These are good questions, but they don't belong here.
Okay.
This is the master plan implementation, not a survey of satisfaction with the town necessarily.
Okay.
I agree.
Valid point.
Okay.
Yeah, Francine?
I'm fine.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Christina, what do you think? Because you
Yeah.
were on the original committee. Do you think we should shorten it by these things?
I think that you're right about that, but then it just shoots me right back up to questions above, like number 12. How does that participation at town meeting, how is that relevant to the implementation of the master plan?
Right. Right.
And many of the questions perhaps that we've asked. So Cindy, I do agree with that if this is to help us move forward with the implementation, are a lot of these questions relevant? I think probably not. So if you slash this, then I think we have to keep that in mind as we go through the rest of them. Is that a primary consideration for us? Will this help us with the implementation?
Right. Okay.
Well,
right.
so I think all of your comments are salient. The thing with the voting question, though, is that in order to achieve some of the goals of the master plan, we need people who are engaged in the process, and some things will have to be approved. So I do kind of, I kind of want to know why people aren't coming.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that. I think we should keep the voting one in.
But in terms of the services, I do feel like that, we're stretching beyond our mandate there.
Okay.
And I was just suggesting that if we're going to jump in here and consider whether it's useful to us with the master plan, we should have been asking that question all along up to question 14. And so I get that 12 might be pertinent, but I think if we're going to slash this one because it's not pertinent to the implementation, we should keep that in mind for every question.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm going to get rid of this one now. Yes?
Yep, they're good questions for another survey.
All right.
And
Ken's
relevant
point
to
earlier
the
about
first survey.
cross-tabulating, it'll be interesting to see degree of engagement versus what those folks, because that's who's going to come out and push for things.
Yeah. All right. It's gone. Now the numbering's all screwed up, but don't worry about that. That'll be a challenge. Okay, so we're down, I think, to this number 8, which is not the right number. But anyway, what should we use as a model for the way Southampton should grow and look in the future? And I put by 2040. I figured, I don't know, 20 years from now? I don't know. Do we need to give them a guideline here? West Hampton, Huntington, Granby, Easthampton, or Hadley? Are these still things that we want to understand?
I'm going to ask Jim to comment here because in one of our meetings of many months ago, Jim made a point of raising the question. I can't recall how you worded it, Jim, but you said something like, are we still a rural community or are we something else?
Yeah.
Do you remember how you asked that question out loud, Jim?
Yeah.
Well, in general, I think you've got it. There's this I think there's it's either a fantasy or
Yeah.
just a strong held belief that we're a rural community, but there's no, in my mind, no real evidence of that. When you look around the town, it's suburbia,
Yeah.
with a few farms dotted in. So you ask a question like this one, what it should be, you know, if people are, you're going to get a lot of people saying it should be a rural residential community.
Right.
Can we ever go back there?
Right. So is the question rather, you know, what best describes Southampton of 2020, and I don't know.
But we want this to be forward looking, right? We want
Right.
we want to know what people want.
Right.
Right, but
I don't know that these are the right categories, and just I think it's important to understand what people would desire in a town.
And this is where I think, Ken, you can help us. You have the strong planning background. You might even have an opinion on what Southampton is based on comparatively to other communities.
or we just eliminate the first two options because we'll never be Westhampton or Huntington. It's just not going to
That's
happen.
true.
We're not going to
Right.
tear down $500,000 homes to make a field again.
Right.
The options
that's
are
a good-
really the
no,
last
that's a
three.
That's a really good point.
Good point.
You know.
That's good. Yep.
Because we can't get back there. So asking the question seems disingenuous.
To me,
Well, if that's the case, which I don't disagree with, I think it's good, then the third option there about being a mostly residential bedroom community with some, we ought to insert something like with some agriculture, open space, and a commercial, a small scale commercial along the main roads. We need to give that option because we aren't even mentioning agriculture there. We do have agriculture.
we do, and we have some. We have open space. So
Yes,
what's
we
the
do.
model town?
That's right.
But do you envision keeping it that way? I think is how we need to ask this
Well, that's
question.
a big question. It's an important question. What about like Belchertown? How would somebody describe Belchertown? Or how would somebody describe Hampton?
Or maybe the option is to leave the town as it is and don't try to describe it as anything else. It is what it is. People will know that Southampton has everything you just described, Cindy.
Okay.
And so the option isn't, in other words, do we want to keep it the way it is now?
Yeah.
Or do we want to change it?
I also, I agree with you, Jim. And I think we should leave off the other towns as examples for a couple of reasons. Number one, is Granby exactly like it says it is here? This was an old questionnaire. Has Granby changed? And has Easthampton changed? Has Hadley changed? The other thing is, does everybody know what Granby is like, or Easthampton or Hadley or any place else?
Yeah.
Or worse, do people have preconceived notions about?
That's what I was thinking, Jim. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because that would dictate how someone responds to that. Oh, I don't like Granby, or I don't like,
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we could leave off the town. So we could add in, keep it the way it is now is one option. Or do we want to define that with some agriculture and open space with
the same amount of agriculture, of course, increase of protecting open space, that's critical. I'm sorry I didn't give this a lot of thought ahead of time because I think this is an important question to understand what people really want going forward.
Yeah, I think that to include whether people would like to retain as much open space as possible or something along those lines would be valid.
Mhm.
Right, because you may not be aware if you're not a town meeting attender, you don't look at the paper, that there's actually been a significant investment in open space in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So,
And some people view open
Describing that.
space as a place to ride a bicycle or ride a four-wheeler or go for a hike, where there's this other whole concept of open space, which is, addresses climate resiliency and other, wetlands and a lot of other reasons to protect open space, not just a place to go hiking.
Yeah.
Then there's also the whole concept that some people seem to embrace that says what we need is more residential building because it's going to contribute to our tax base, which is of course not correct. The more residents, the more demand on municipal services. So I'm wishing I had thought about this question ahead of time.
Well,
I think it would be rewritten.
We'll come back to it. I'm going to get rid of these two in the middle, though. The rural residential communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay if we're tabling. We know that we want to have a question similar to this, and then maybe, you know, we can table it because we know there's more work that has to be done on this.
I agree.
And I guess we could ask Ken, are these accurate and timely descriptions of communities and the way they might evolve?
Let me take a look at some of the newer surveys that some of my colleagues have shared with their communities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think adding the maintenance or keeping Southampton the way it is a very important question, or a very important option to answer that. But yeah, let me take a look. I mean, just quickly looking at those, hopefully it seems identifiable as things that you would possibly want in a town.
Yeah.
The bedroom community maybe need to be explained a little bit more, but I think everything else seems appropriate, and the lingo is still.
Yeah. Would we still be considering ourselves though as a rural residential community with a small commercial center? I mean, does that tie in with?
I don't think so.
No.
Not to my opinion, anyway.
No.
Well, you could get rid of the word rural. It's a residential community with a small commercial center.
So how does that, true, but is that different than the one below it?
The bedroom community?
Yeah, they seem pretty close. For me, they're conflated.
Well,
Okay.
that
I'll
is,
leave it in green. We'll come back to it. I'll get rid of this other one.
that is true.
Just let me reiterate one important point that I've heard Ken state in the past, which is the master plan is a very critical document for planning. And one of the questions on that section might have to do with, do we want more zoning changes? Do we want more commercial or industrially zoned properties versus as much residential that we have,
Right.
or open space? I don't, again, this needs a lot of work, so I think we should table it.
Yeah. Okay. Because again, these questions kind of, they're kind of mishmashed all over the place, and they really need to be grouped a little bit more logically together in my mind. But anyway.
I agree.
Okay, with regard to the historic village center of Southampton, do you want it like it is? Want to see it developed with more commercial, civic, and residential uses? Those were the choices. Is that?
I would ask how on the second option. How could that be done? The historic village is pretty well settled. There's not much room left for new things.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Would anyone know, are there any historical zoning limits? So let's say I wanted to jam a Burger King into the site of the old Grange Hall. Could I do that? Was there anything limiting me from doing that?
Well, it's part of the, it's on the historic, the National Historic Register. So it is a historic downtown, the center district, but no, there is no,
So is that what
there's no prohibition of it.
So is that what we're getting at with this question? I guess is my.
Well, and it could be like, that if we ever get the public safety complex someday, the restoration of the old town hall, police station, and fire station, could those be turned into whatever, artist lofts or other small businesses or whatever, like Easthampton has done, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would be that kind of a thought.
We do have the zoning bylaws, and I'm pulling them out right now as to how we're zoned. So I think the question is a general question. That's how I would do it. I wouldn't just do it about the historic center. I would just say, do we want to change? What kinds of zoning changes do we want to see in our town?
But then
We only have 2 commercial districts in our town.
Yeah.
But then you'd have to define, I think, to some
Right.
extent,
It's too open-ended.
industrial versus commercial versus cluster versus, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many different distinctions
Uh-huh.
that
Right.
you would
I think,
assume
I
that
think you
people
could
have to understand.
simplify it though. I think you could simplify it. No?
Really? I don't know. I'm just wondering, like,
I mean,
so
for some reason,
industrial, wouldn't the
Yeah.
location be important where the industrial is versus the commercial versus?
I mean, I think this was obviously directed at the historic, center of town for a particular reason in the old survey. Because it's not just a generic question like that. So it would be, in my mind, it would be for some other civic purpose. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the police station gets converted to a community center, for example, or something. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, for me, I read it as, it's like the question to me is loaded with protecting the look of the historic downtown. And that's why I asked the extreme, the putting in a Dunkin' Donuts there.
Yeah.
Would that fit? Or are we asking we want to keep it as it is? You could convert the old police station into a community center and it's still an old building with an historical look. I don't think that's the same as I want to put up a drive-through coffee shop.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I don't
it's
know if that's what it's getting at.
well, I think it's a question as to whether you value
Yeah.
the historic center.
Yeah.
Do you value it, or do you want to see changes in it that make it more versatile for what it's offering?
Maybe that's the question. Do you want to like it is, or do you want to see changes that'll make it more versatile?
Yeah, that might be a good way to go. And it's kind of less specific.
Right.
Okay. Well, we can have that thought, and then we can rework that here. We can maybe without giving these want to see it developed with more commercial uses here. Just leave that. Get rid of that choice.
I agree.
Okay. Well, we can rework that a little bit somehow.
Yeah, and can I just say that I will confess that when I moved here, I had no idea that that was a historic village center. If you would have asked me that question, if I was brand new to the town, I would have said, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. Let's see if I can just do this up. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to reworking some of these. Okay. Kinds of businesses which would make Southampton a better place to live. Instead of that, I thought, would you frequent would be rather than better place to live, and choose all that apply. And there were a few here that were put down. The one that I've heard talked about a lot is just people would like to have a nice breakfast place or a combination breakfast lunch place. So I didn't know if this restaurant one here really, captured that. Places to hang out, coffee shops, ice cream. Do we have another Sheldon's in town? Do we need another Sheldon's in town? I don't know. Neighborhood retail and services, large retail. Again, would we have another supermarket in town? I mean, some of these I don't know that we'd want to put forth. So I don't know what is the question. What's missing here? Again, this goes to our notion of economic development, our notion of how do we attract business to town? What kind of businesses do we want? Do we want the dollar stores? Do we want,
Right. So do we use this data to attract businesses? Do we say, because, I mean, in the capitalist model, right, if there's a vacuum, it'll be filled. So if people want a breakfast lunch place, you'd think someone's going to build it, yet it doesn't happen. So does a survey help that business build it?
Well, it may allow people to decide at, planning board level or somewhere else. If somebody comes in to say, hey, we want to do I don't know what.
A diner or something with breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, a diner, okay, that would work. But somebody could say, yeah, no, that fits with, kind of our thought about what we would like to see in town. But I can't even think of a bad example to give you. But some other thing that would say, no, we don't want that in town. It's really not going to improve the, the look of town, the character of town, whatever. I can't think of a good example, but it would allow people to make a decision, maybe. Yeah.
Help inform the planning board and whatnot. And
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I have a thought, and this whole question is in yellow because I put it in yellow, and my yellow represented, do we really need this? I say with not even ask these questions. And the reason I say this is this. We know that the infrastructure is so limiting in our town that drawing in, like, for example, a large Target or Home Depot or someplace like that is pretty unlikely.
Another question.
And also, I don't think this is the right time to ask these questions. That's my personal feeling. We know that we had this Dunkin' Donut option come before us. It was withdrawn at the last minute at town meeting. It supposedly was going to go on the May town meeting warrant. I don't know if it did. Maybe somebody could tell me that. But the point was exactly what somebody just said. If there's a potential for a business and the business says, gee, Southampton would be a nice place to put a Dunkin' Donut, they're going to come forward and they're going to do what they have to do to make it happen if the town wants it, and it'll go to town meeting. Asking the question, I don't know that it is necessary right now. That's just my 2 cents worth. If somebody came, they would come to planning board preliminarily, talk about their plans, and then there would be a public hearing. And then people could go to the public hearing and comment like it did with the Dunkin' Donut. And then from there, it would go to town meeting. So I don't think there's any active economic development going, attempts going on. There's nobody in charge of that in our town government. There's nobody going out doing that.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, it's not really a wise thing.
Yeah. No, I think the thing here that it comes to my mind, I mean, we've obviously got the empty People's Store up there now. So whatever is going to come in there, nobody seems to know. But, there's been comments about yet another gym coming in or something, and various comments on social media, obviously, about, how many more gyms do we need in town? We don't need another gym, da 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 da. So I guess it would be more appropriate if we did have an active economic development person or committee or something in town to, really pursue our links with the Easthampton Chamber of Commerce, of which we are a member, to really proactively try to attract business to town. That, I guess, would be where this question is the most relevant. So I kind of like it, but at the same time, it may be wrongly placed right now.
Could be another one of those survey questions that doesn't belong in this survey. It's a good question.
Francine, thoughts? You looked like you were going to say something.
I was just thinking that, asking, it's hard to ask an open-ended question. I mean, we're trying to force people into answers. But I mean, categorically, dining, entertainment, just something a little more generic, less specificity to get some idea if people are satisfied with what we have available or not. I mean,
so dining, entertainment, or shopping.
But to Cindy's point, I would argue, so what? So I hear your point, Francine, but what is that going to do for us?
Yeah.
How is that information going to change without, a professional planner or someone that's paid for by the town who's doing this kind of work?
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm going to be a contrarian here. Just because if I'm, a citizen of Southampton and I receive a survey about planning for the future of Southampton, it comes from the master plan committee, I would be surprised if a question like this was not on the survey. What would I want to see in the town? And you can put some qualifiers in there about, that we do have infrastructure issues, et cetera, so people aren't expecting this could happen. But to know that people would want a diner, or, something like that, I think we also want to have people feel like they're giving some input into what they want to see. And maybe that opens a can of worms, but I'm just saying, if I were to receive the survey and not know any of the background, I would be shocked that I wouldn't be able to say what I would want to see in my city.
Okay, I buy that. I agree with that.
And the level of interest might drive those other kind of infrastructure things somewhere down the road. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, should we maybe not put some of these examples down here?
Yes.
then?
Yeah, I
Is that
think
promise?
leave them, yeah.
Get rid of like the supermarket, Target, Home Depot kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, those aren't even possible,
Yeah,
right?
right. So you just
So you almost don't want to get people's hopes up, because I mean those cannot happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just take out some of the simple clarifiers here for now anyway.
Yeah, dining, entertainment, retail / services. I mean, we could use some more repair shops of some type or other,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know.
Do we want to, like, what's a specialty retail versus a large retail?
I guess where they were kind of like single item things, or single,
So like,
well,
like,
called only clothing versus
like the quilt shop or something like that?
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we used to have a fish store, and now we
Yeah.
have a
We got a little
float store.
a pool store.
offload
Mhm.
store or whatever it is.
Yeah. Hydroponics.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Right.
Okay. So, okay, let's leave it for now and we may come back to it, but I'm going to take it out of yellow so we know we want to try and save something maybe.
So I'm going to disagree here, and I'll
Okay.
tell you why.
Sorry.
Well, I think the points everyone just made make sense, but again, it's about the survey. So we took out, didn't we, earlier, a whole section about what people think about police, fire, ambulance.
Right.
We took that out, but we're going to leave this in. That's inconsistent. Are we trying to keep the survey focused on areas that we can actually implement and change versus we're getting a sense of what people want? That's why this is getting so large. So I feel we're inconsistent if we leave this in and we took the others out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think it ties.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say later on, as we get down here, there's a couple questions related to, would you be willing to have an increase in taxes in order to pay for X, Y, and Z? Or that's where these kinds of things might come in if we had to invest in infrastructure, for example. And we can't get them without doing the infrastructure development in many cases. So it may tie in later on in the survey rather than here. I don't know yet. I guess I'd be in favor of just holding on to it for now until we get through it and see. We can put it in italics and just sort of wait till we get down through these and see if it makes sense with these
Okay.
for the moment. But Margaret, any thoughts there? Sorry.
No. Yeah. I'll leave it from what I said earlier.
Okay. All right. Then where should the town encourage new commercial development? Now we know where we've got our commercial sections of town already zoned. So again, are we doing any of this to guide us to the future? One of my thoughts was a question would be different. How important is it to you to encourage new commercial development in town? That to me is a better question, but.
Or I agree, but I would add, like a little prefix, knowing that the commercial tax rate will be the same as the residential tax rate.
Yeah.
How important is it to encourage new commercial development in town?
Mhm.
Because I don't think there's a real, realistic chance to get that separate tax rate. It doesn't seem to happen in surrounding towns that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
That's kind of,
in towns with many more
Yeah.
commercial entities than what we have.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Okay.
So how is that question being changed?
Just beginning, knowing that the commercial and residential tax rates will likely remain the same, how important is it to you to encourage new commercial development in town?
Okay, so that's a different question altogether than where should they be. So,
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so you're eliminating that question and replacing it with the new question.
That would be my thought, just because we know where we've got things already zoned and there's not much, I don't know, other choice for commercial development, is there, right? The way we are right now?
The area of commercial, available for commercial development is,
Pretty simple.
I'm told, just a lot of wetlands. If you go a little bit south of where the bank is there, what's the name of that bank? The
Polish Credit Union.
It's all got for sale signs on it. You can see them.
Yeah.
But they tell me, I say, why doesn't somebody build there? Well, it was very, very difficult even for the credit union to build. They had a lot of issues to build that building there on that side of the road. So
It's pretty
even
wet.
though that's all currently zoned commercial, you can't just expect something to go in there. It's going to be a big hassle.
Well, and right along that river too, it's kind of hard, I think, too. But
Yeah.
so I think my thought would be to get rid of this. Where should the town encourage new?
I agree. Yep.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, go on.
But do we need to, we've talked about changing zoning so there are more areas for commercial development. Does that need to be included? As a question, do we need to have zoning changes to provide more commercial, the possibility for more commercial development?
I think that is a good question, and we can really test the waters on this. We know that's come up. It's come up to change industrial to commercial. The one on the corner of Valley Road and right near J&E Electronics there, that did come up at the last meeting and failed. So I think, Christina, that's a good question to add in there.
Okay, so do you think zoning changes are needed to encourage more commercial development to make, is that the right word? Do you think zoning changes are needed to identify more locations for commercial development?
I think you have that later on in the survey. Because it suggests, please indicate your level of support for the following strategies to improve the town's tax base or shift the tax burden from residential taxpayers to retail and non-retail commercial taxpayers. And then you list options for zoning, encouraging commercial development, industrial development, and then they're more value, strongly opposed versus strongly support.
Okay, so that's redundant. Take it out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this question is really asking whether or not you understand that we'd have to change the zoning regulations. It doesn't mean that you're not asking the question, are you willing to change the zoning regulations in order to include more commercial business? I think those are two different issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, so this question just becomes knowing that the commercial, as Jim said, knowing that the commercial and residential tax rates will likely remain the same, how important is it to you to encourage new commercial development in town? Very important, somewhat important, not important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I added this in here, and you can throw it right out if you'd like. Would you be willing to have?
Sorry, Chris. I'm sorry. That last question.
Yep.
To be consistent, should we have the 5 scale there rather than the 3?
Okay. So what would we have here?
1 through 5.
Yeah, just the 1 through 5. You can template it from a question further down or whatever. But
rather than the very important, somewhat important.
Yeah.
Yeah, because further down the question does ask whether or not you would want 2 tax rates. So you're probably going to want to replace this with that, or replace that with this.
Okay.
You can just copy and paste from the one further down that has the 5 options.
Okay. All right. Will do. Okay. So then this next one is a thought for an addition, and I don't know if this gets at anything. Would you be willing to have an increase, or whatever, poor wording, but to have an increase in property taxes to install a public sewer system in at least one area of town selected for commercial development? or
That
develop
one's-
our own public utility capability to improve our internet broadband service.
Yeah.
Purchase strategically located lands to preserve open space. Encourage installation of solar farms on private or town land, and convert police and fire historic buildings for safer, usable civic or other purpose. So those were kind of things that was like, all right, put your money where your mouth is. You want certain things in town, or do you? And if you do, are you willing to understand that this may have an impact on your taxes? So whether it belongs here or not at all, I don't know, but any comments are more than welcome.
It seems to me as though some of that is further on.
Okay, could be.
Yeah, there's a similarly asked question further.
Yeah, number 31, please indicate whether you would consider supporting tax increases for each of the following, and that's a 1 to 5
Okay.
choice.
Okay, all
Okay.
right.
All right, well, we'll italicize it and we'll come back around and make sure that we haven't lost it altogether, but that's fine, as long as it's somewhere. Should the town encourage non-retail commercial light industrial development? Where should they do this? And rather than that, a thought would be, what types of light industrial development would you want to see in town? Or
If any.
if any.
You don't even know what light industrial is.
Yeah, we don't know what that is actually.
Yeah, so we'd have
Yeah,
to
I
define
wonder
that
what.
too. So right now we've got what, two places zoned as industrial?
Right now, we have, there's only two. I'm sorry, there's one teeny weeny third one, and that's way over there in the Hampton Ponds area, Pequot Road area. But the other ones, everything south of Valley Road on the west side
Yeah.
of Route 10, all the way to the Westfield line, is considered industrial.
Industrial.
That includes Kate Miller's orchards and all the way down. It's not industrial. The only industry there is the J&E Electronics, but those are all zoned
And the other one is over on Clark Street. Right?
industrial. The other industrial, correct, right? Yes, on Clark Street, and the very small one way over on
Yeah.
I can't read the road, but it's over by the ponds.
Yeah.
I think it's Pequot. And those are the only industrial zoned areas there. And as you might have heard me say before, some of the guys on the plan.
Losing you, Cindy.
You froze, Cindy. We might have to mute our mics to make it work.
I think so.
Try again, Cindy. Got internet issues here apparently. All right. Well, while Cindy's coming back, other thoughts here? Is this one that, do we think that we would have any other industrial development zone in town anywhere that we know of that was ever discussed before? I mean, is
I think the way that you presented it in the previous section with regards to commercial development, I think it's more of a value question. And the second question that you have under that yellow section, I think kind of gets to that. And maybe it's not even asking what types, it's asking, do you want additional industrial development?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because it's similar to, the question that you ask above. And I think that you may be able to even put maybe use some of this language in that above question and just make it like commercial and non-retail commercial or something like that. Where you suggest you have commercial development and then you have industrial development, but it's just lumped as not residential. So,
Yeah, but I think, given that we've only got the two areas really zoned as industrial though, I mean, we may want to make that clear. I mean, that, we're not lumping it in as commercial though. right?
Yeah, and I guess, because we did discuss that question that was with regards to the commercial development. It is addressed in question 32.
Yeah.
And it does say, this particular section says encourage non-retail commercial development by expanding land zone for light industrial use.
Yeah. So this was the question, encourage, yeah, we didn't change this question that I know of, maybe, non-retail.
Well, the commercial, with regards to the commercial section, you had a question that identified places.
Right.
This is doing the same thing. I don't know if that's what you want to do, or if the question is whether or not you want to suggest that there is a need for industrial type uses in town,
Yeah.
or there is a want for that.
Well, and again, the tax base isn't changing any.
Right.
And the only reason that we've got these two ends of town is that's because it's tied into the public systems of Westfield and Easthampton.
Right.
So I don't know that this is really the way it is. I don't know that that's particularly a relevant question, but whether we should be asking whether people would like to see other industrial development in town, then that would give us, I guess, some thoughts about looking at that space below Valley Road in terms of how that could be converted into that, I suppose. I don't know.
But doesn't question 32 actually do that?
Yeah, maybe. All right. Maybe. I'm just gonna, so see, that's where a lot of these are kind of repetitive, and this was a headache, frankly, frustrating.
Yeah, and they're so far apart.
Well, they are, and I'm not even on 32 now, but we're getting somewhere here. Just on this one, scale of 1 to 5, indicate your support for the following potential strategy for residential growth and preserving the character. So all this stuff here on the 1 to 5 areas. Oh boy. So there was that kind of thing. There's a lot of housing issues here. Jim, are you still with us?
Mm-hmm.
Did I lose Jim? No. Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Okay. I think I've still lost Cindy again. Gosh. Oh, she's having too much trouble. Okay. So this one about support for each of the following strategy for residential growth. I didn't know, the couple I've highlighted here were just ones I thought we probably wanted to leave the question, but I wasn't sure about concentrating development near the village center while preserving outlying areas, and then the restrictive sign guidelines and clustering commercial development in neighborhood commercial centers. Those were 3 that I thought were not particularly relevant myself, but out of our choices here, in an effort to try and just so Cindy's calling. Hold on. Hello. Okay. Can you get on just audio? Oh wow. Okay. Can I put you on speakerphone?
So I can just keep doing the meeting and I'm listening. That's all I can tell you.
Okay, I've got you on speakerphone on my phone. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Can you guys hear Cindy at all?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll do it that way. All right. So we're down onto the we thought the industrial light development may show up a little bit later in the questionnaire too, Cindy. So we're gonna kind of skip down on that one. Some of these are so repetitive, but this one that we're on here is the strategy for residential growth and for preserving Southampton's rural character. So again, this trying to think to the future rather than what it was 10 years ago. So there's about 8 or 10 or least choices here of 1 to 5, strongly oppose all the way to strongly support. Do we think in general this is the kind of question that we want to still leave in there?
No. What does everybody else think?
This is in terms of where we would encourage residential growth. So, And this includes cluster development. It does the high density housing, create larger lot sizes.
I guess I want to understand why you don't think this would.
Yeah, I think this is relevant.
I think this, for me, this is like part of our whole goal of, developing a master plan. So I'm just curious about where you're coming from.
Are you talking about, I'm looking at the actual old survey, I'm looking at my paper copy. Are you talking about the one that says it's number 20?
Yeah, my numbers are all screwed up, so I can't tell you.
Yes, number 20.
Okay, yep.
Okay, I withdraw that. I will say emphatically no. I do think it should be simplified a little bit. Like, for example, I see further down that there's some reference to commercial development and clustering it, and I didn't put a lot of attention and thought into it, thinking, maybe Jim would want to give his thought to all of this.
Yeah.
So how far did you get in your conversation on this?
No, we were just kind of getting started. So the places that you guys that can see it in yellow are ones that needs to be updated a little bit here in terms of the population and the population statistics and all that little intro would have to be updated. But then this notion about concentrating residential development near the village center, I don't know if there's that much choice down there, is there, to really have more residential development down at the village center downtown?
Well, you could encourage in the residential center. Again, we're not talking about the historic district. Let's say around where the Opa Opa was, for example. You could encourage, and Ken, I'm curious what you think about this, but commercial and residential combination development where you have a storefront and upstairs you have apartment buildings, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So you encourage that kind of development. That often will promote more affordable options, especially if you have a developer who wants to, like the Dunkin' Donuts option, that wants to develop in a space.
Yeah.
A way to encourage a win-win is the developer gets to put in their commercial spot and the town out of it wrangles some affordable housing in the upstairs units or whatever. So that's the kind of thing I see as a way to, to make the commercial residential downtown area more fit the needs of the town.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you something. Some of the open spaces up there in the village center, perhaps on the lower side of High Street, that's already under conservation restriction. A good part of it, especially on the north end of it. We know that there's a developer that bought the property that he rebuilt that whole house that was behind the brick wall on Route 10. Everybody knows what that is. He made it into a really nice house, but he has another lot on the back end of that that's on the High Street end of it, and there's a question about whether he wants to put a spec house in there, and the abutter is Janet Brown, and she's already got a CR on her whole open space that she rents out to some farmer, I guess, and they've got cows on there. So the question is, are there going to be limitations on developing that because of conservation restrictions, or what? And do we want to? I don't know how we want to word that, but it's not just a case of do we want to see it developed. There's other issues to consider.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's not get too far in the weeds, because we're going to have to come back through these again. But in general, this type of question we think we should leave in there. From what I'm gathering, we may want to pare down 2 or 3 of the options here. I mean, for me, for example, this other one, more restrictive sign guidelines, not allowing bright neon signs. I mean, is that really a big issue that we have to worry about?
No.
For some towns it is. I'll give you the example. If you're familiar with the town of Haydenville, when there was a fight, the bank closed and they tore the bank down and they put in a Dunkin' Donuts there, but the town insisted that the Dunkin' Donuts in Haydenville not be the usual color of Dunkin' Donuts. And so it fits more with a New England town kind of look.
Yeah.
Down the Cape, lots of examples where there's limits to signage. Is that something we want for our town?
I think we have some signage guidelines already it's either in a It's somewhere. I've seen it.
You have them in your zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but to what degree? Because if you look just further down from Opa Opa, where, you know, Southampton Liquors and Paisanos are, there doesn't seem to be any sign
Yeah.
limits there.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and that's okay. It's, you know,
All right. Well,
I guess that's what the question is getting at, though. Do people
Yeah.
want to change that or not?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's assume that we would like to keep this question, but we may come back and just double check and see if all of these choices are ones that we still need to have in there, just so that we can keep on moving forward a little bit. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is, based on your income level, are there sufficient housing options for you and your family in Southampton? And we were waiting for Jim to be helping us with some input here. Whether you think that yes/no question gets us anywhere, or then please indicate whether you're satisfied with your present housing. All of those kinds of situations, if those are both relevant questions.
I mean, I thought these were good questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Certainly the present number 14.
Yeah. What about the first one, the income level? Are there sufficient housing options? So if somebody says no, then what do we say? So what? I mean, what do we do?
Yeah.
I mean, it tells us what we think we already know, right? That
Right.
housing is not affordable in town, right? So does it get us any new information? I'm not sure that it does.
Well, it reinforces what we think. You know,
Yeah.
we come in, certainly as the member of the housing authority, do I come in with a certain lens on that blinds me to? So that's a fair, critical question someone could ask me. Is, so if I had data to say,
Okay.
there's not enough affordable housing, as opposed to it's my opinion there isn't.
Yeah. Well, and it may be, actually, now that you say that, it may be something, it could be a data point that someday in the future here, if we were looking for outside funding for some sort of, you know, housing that we were wanting to do, that might be an important piece of data that we could show somebody as to why we need the housing, for example. Yeah. Okay. I won't.
Right. And cross-tabulating, as Ken was saying earlier, it'd be interesting to see how, you know, younger people who maybe can't afford to live in town answer this question versus not.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then how about, please indicate whether you're satisfied with your present housing. And then it goes, yes, I am. No, I'm not. Too large, too small, too expensive. I thought that was kind of still a good question. Anybody have any yay or nays on that one offhand?
Okay.
And then these two about moving around in Southampton here. I was trying to combine these a little bit. If your family member, you or your family, were to move to another living situation within Southampton someday, what do you think would meet your future needs? And that was tied into the one following it in terms of the size of the home or apartment you'd need. So I was trying to combine the two into one.
So this to me gets back to, Chris, you know, are we going to have multiple copies per household? Because it looks like with the present number 15, you're trying to combine it to represent a household.
Right.
Earlier, we were saying we're going to segregate that out. So I don't know if the new one you put in with purple, if we're segregating, if we're having multiple copies per household, if that's, I see what you were trying to do. And I appreciate it. But I don't think it makes sense now that we've kind of moved away from the idea of a representative household survey to, if the household has, you know, 4 people in it over the age of 16 or whatever, there can be 4 surveys.
Yeah. All right. So what would you like me to get rid of? My purple here?
Yes, I'm thinking.
Okay. Can do. I was thinking of, you know, here I was thinking of affordable housing in terms of like a, you know, college kids, and they would, you know, share housing or something. That was my thinking there. Renting an apartment, what size apartment? Oops, sorry. Let me get rid of this stuff. Okay. Yeah. What about this notion of a and then again in terms of how big the house is? Don't know if it really matters that much.
Right.
What about this notion of owning a manufactured home? Do we have too many prefab homes in town? Is that an issue? I mean, is that a valid choice?
Does it matter? you know,
I mean,
my son was in a prefab house. You'd look at it and you wouldn't know that, but that came in on a trailer truck. I know that.
yeah,
Does it really, really matter in terms of the survey?
I don't see the value in it myself. That's why I highlighted
Yeah.
it. Anybody else?
Great.
I mean, you're owning it, or whether, you know, whatever it's made out of, who cares, right? I mean,
Right.
you either own it or you don't.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I think including that implies some kind of value judgment about that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So Chris, if you would go back up, so I think being consistent, how this question is worded, if you or your family members, it should be just if you.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're gonna be right.
Very good. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Perfect. So then get rid of this. I do not anticipate ever requiring. I'll get rid of all this
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
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 I do not anticipate.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
for that consistency. Good. Okay. So then that really kind of gets rid of this one that's now what I called 16, that's red here. That kind of combined things, because we don't really care necessarily, right, about how many bedrooms. We talked about that earlier, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that one altogether. Get rid of that craziness. So then I would like to see the town promote the following. And again, I'm trying to figure out where that other one is here. But anyway, so this would be something too that would tie into some zoning and or whatever kind of changes, I guess. So again, choosing all that apply, that we would want the town to be more actively engaged, I guess, in making happen. So from detached single family homes to accessory apartments, conversion of single family to multifamily housing units. Anybody have any thoughts about that one that's currently 16
So
on
Chris, were these formally questions 25 and 26?
I think they were, yeah. Yeah.
So I thought for these questions, I think they're a good question, but I would like to see each, and then makes the survey longer, but each of these ranked 1 through 5. So detached single family homes, 1 through 5. Duplex homes, 1 through 5.
Okay.
So you actually get some hard numbers to, because I may want to see apartment buildings and detached single family homes, and I could check them all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give us a sense of priority or importance, because I could
Gotcha.
think they're important, but when I have to rate them,
Yeah. Okay.
each one,
So with our little circle, 1 to 5 circle choices, yeah. All right.
for
Good
both
point.
this one and the next one.
Yeah. Okay, and here I didn't know if we wanted to necessarily single out senior citizen housing, or again, I'm thinking first-time home buyers. So you tell me whether senior citizens should stay in there.
I do. Yes, you might ask a separate question for first-time home buyers.
Okay.
I would put affordable, accessible senior housing.
Better yet.
Okay. Affordable, accessible. Okay. Yeah, hang on.
I have to sign out. I'm sorry. I have to leave before you're
Okay.
calling your meeting.
All right. Thank you. We're oh gosh, we're a little longer
We're
than I
way past
thought.
our target time, aren't we?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
just a little bit.
I apologize, but
No, thank you, Christina.
I've
Appreciate
reached
it
my
very
limit.
much.
Good night.
All right. We'll catch up with you.
Christina.
Hi, Christina.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So affordable, accessible senior housing options. Yeah, is that what we said?
Mhm.
Okay. And rate that as a 1 to 5 too. And this would be the subsidized housing units for low income seniors, small affordable market rate units, or high end market rate units. Are those the right choices?
5 for each of those. Yeah.
Yeah. And then who should have priority for affordable housing? This was one I think I added. Seniors, first time home buyers, town workers. I don't know if you can actually even ask that question, but
Yeah, are you allowed to do that?
probably not.
I don't know
Yeah, I
if we
don't
want
think
to, even
so.
if we are allowed to.
We
Huh?
are?
I said, I don't know if we want to, even if we are
Right.
allowed.
Yeah, I don't see the
Okay.
point of that one.
It's gone. All right. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't somehow forgetting the first-time home buyers, because I think that really is, we focus on the seniors, which we should, but there are the
No, we definitely want to focus on the first-time home buyers too. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Growth of that housing in this town.
yeah, I don't think we have that anywhere offhand.
We should.
What's this?
So Chris, I would scroll up a little bit. So, where it says, where did it say? No, further down, I'm sorry. Right here, number 17. You could ask the same question, but again, except to change affordable, accessible senior housing to affordable housing. Or first-time housing options, or something like that.
So ask the question again, changing the
Instead of
descriptor.
targeting
Okay.
seniors, you would target.
Yeah.
But your choices would be different, no?
Well, subsidized housing units for low-income
That would
seniors.
apply.
Right.
Mhm.
So you think those choices would all apply? The
Yeah.
small affordable market rate units, subsidized housing, and high-end market rate units, they would all apply? Would people know how to answer that? What's a high-end market unit? Market rate unit.
Yeah, I don't know why it says market rate. That didn't seem, but I'm not a real estate person either, so.
Yeah, I don't know. All right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, again, we'll have to tease through this even more, but
Yeah, high-end market rate doesn't just be high-end. I mean.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
And what if people don't need a small affordable, but a large affordable? Does that go into high end?
Or shared, this could be my shared housing, question or something.
Yeah.
With other college kids or whatever in my brain, but we can reword that. All right, a couple more and then we'll just call it quits here. Assisted living facilities and nursing homes. I'm not thinking that we even need to ask that question, do we? About encouraging, I want to see the town promote assisted living facilities and nursing homes. Are those questions, I mean, the reality of having a nursing home in town and.
Without the infrastructure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
It goes along the same lines of retail. You can say, yeah, I'd love to have all these things, but.
Why ask them something that they
Yeah.
can't deliver?
Can't have, yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay. All right, how far are we down here? We're almost, oh my God, we're almost done, sort of it. All right,
Wow.
well, we're getting there, but I wanted to do one thing here. We may just have to call it quits because I know we've already spent time here. The affordable housing comes in here too, and we'd have to double check all this, the blurb here that defines the affordable housing and the statistics. So this affordable housing, maybe we can weave some of that up into those, the affordable part for the seniors and first-time home buyers too.
Right.
We might be able to weave that up into that previous question. And then these other
With
ones.
the 1 to 5 ranking like you have here.
Yeah, right. And then these here, though, the way I was trying to do it was not so much the 1 to 5 over here. On this one, your level of support for the following statements should promote development of the elderly, housing. Again, these all seem incredibly repetitive to me. But what I was trying to do here was not use this scale, but to do what we were trying to say of the rank ordering. So out of these 7 things, what's your highest priority? 1 through 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
What's your highest priority out of these?
Rank them.
Right.
Yeah.
Rank them.
I like that.
That's what I was trying to do with that one. And then the state.
The only comment I have on there, if you go up,
Yep.
is Southampton already. Where are we on the?
Yep. Go ahead. Tell me what you're looking for.
Talking about having to require a certain number of affordable housing units.
Yeah, the 10%, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the question should be: would you like to see Southampton change its requirement from 1 in 10 to 1 in 5 or something like that?
Well, so the requirement of 1 in 10 is the state law,
right here.
Right.
and we're not even close. We're not even in the ballpark.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, frankly, the relevance of asking that question here, because it's such, that's a big stone you're pushing up a big hill. I don't know why we'd be asking that question, frankly.
Which question are we talking about now? The affordable housing?
The number of houses, in a development, if it's 10, you have to have one affordable. That's why
Oh, I'm
everybody builds
sorry.
9.
I'm sorry, Francine. I misunderstood.
The third, Chris, it's the third one under 19. The third one, Southampton should require a certain percentage.
Got it. Okay.
Whether or not we should modify it, and whether or not
Yes.
that will do any good.
Okay.
Would we end up with a chance of getting a more affordable housing if we change the ratio? I don't know.
Well, I think we could, but
I think that what you should do is focus on, do we want affordable housing? And then we have to alter our bylaws to meet that. If we continue to think that it's really important, I don't think that should go in the survey, how we're going to do it. Because,
Okay.
We already have a bylaw that does encourage affordable housing, but it doesn't work because of the way the developers do it.
Yeah.
If they build more than 9, then they're supposed to have at least one affordable house, and therefore they always limit it to 9.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So consequently, if we say we really want affordable housing here, then that sort of puts the pressure on the planning board and town meeting to say we got to change this bylaw. We got to do something else.
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So we'd leave it. We'd leave it the way it is, right? Is what we're saying, as an option.
Yeah.
We already have that.
Yeah.
Or you can say Southampton should continue requiring.
Yes. Yeah. That's better.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Good.
And the degree of that requirement
Yeah.
is based on the results, which
Yeah.
right now is not good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll just run through these real quick because we'll go into more detail next time. So the next one was on public transport. It gave us some ideas if there were bus service in town. This one too, I was just suggesting that we do a rank order of priorities. If there was, if there were a bus service, would you use it? What would be the most likely route that you would use it for?
Chris, can I ask a question?
Yep.
If you're sharing screen, it looks like we're on page 5 of 8.
Yeah.
Is
But
it
only
your goal
because
to finish this tonight? Because I don't think I'm
Yeah.
going to make it.
no, we're not. I think we're on the last. I just wanted to show you what's left. That's all. We're not going to go through it. So there's the transport one is here. Then if the one was on sidewalks, that would be the same idea of a ranked choice rather than this other one. And then this tax increase one is the one we talked about before. So that you're right. This is coming back in here. I added a couple of things down into it down here. So I can go back and try and play with that some more. And then this last one about the town of Southampton should do this. This is, again, all just mixed up. And I was trying to categorize things so that people would rank order within the category. So just to say, there's a bunch of stuff that just is kind of thrown at you that doesn't totally get us where we want to, I think. And I think there was just one. I just wanted to show you one thing that Brittany, if I can do this, just 2 seconds. One last one that Brittany gave me. Oh God, hold on. Brittany had one question which I thought was a good one. If you guys can just look at this, this goes way back at the beginning now, but which best describes your household? Check all that apply. Single homeowner with rooms rented out, couple with children, single parents with adult children at home, multi-generational, 3+ generations living together. I think that's a great question that we ought to insert back in whatever we didn't have already, because that was not asked at all. So I think that's a good question from Brittany that I thought was very
I like
relevant.
that.
So that kind of describes the character of the housing
that.
rather than some of the ways that it was phrased there maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we've gone through a lot, guys. It's almost 9 o'clock. I think we definitely have to call it quits. I really hoped we'd end at 8:30, but this was worse than I thought it would be just in terms of going through this nightmare. But I think it's just because so much of this is so disjointed. It's not laid out so that you can deal with all the kind of questions that really belong together in one spot. You know, it feels like to me it hops around a little bit. So we didn't get into the idea of surveys and how to do methods. So I think we really have to think about that too for next time. So how about if we can just kind of skip through and just think about a next meeting and then call an adjournment. What's everybody's druthers? Are we feeling like we're a little bit motivated to keep on tackling the survey?
We are, and I might suggest, Chris, that you could
Yeah. Go ahead,
email
Jim.
out.
Go ahead.
You could email out.
This one.
We've been making corrections that was been going live, so
Yeah.
The latest version, what you just did, would be helpful.
Yeah.
as a
I
starting
definitely
point for
need
next
to
time.
tidy it up quite a bit, but let me work on it for a couple of days and see if I can get it into some reasonable form, so that we'd have another draft to look at for another meeting.
Mhm.
And I'll get that out to you sooner than later, obviously, because it needs to be re-tinkered here. Okay. So who has a calendar and can suggest another date in a couple weeks?
Well, a couple weeks would be the 11th.
Monday the 11th is an idea. May 11th. Anybody
That's
else?
fine with me.
Yeah. Anybody? Ken, Jim, Cindy?
That's good.
Yeah, May 11th is good.
Okay, let's call May 11th at 7 o'clock. I thank you. And can we have a motion to adjourn this wonderful meeting? And thank you all for participating.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting. Nice job, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
All
And
right.
it's nice to see everybody has long hair.
You're right. There we go.
There we go. Okay.
A little grayer too.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Good night,
All right,
everybody.
good night, everybody. We pronounce
Do
it
you need a
adjourned.
motion? You need to make this official?
I think we'll pronounce it adjourned if everybody agrees. Anybody disagree on adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
All right, all agreed. We are adjourned, and I'm stopping recording at 9:02. Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.